In a twist even more improbable than the great polar vortex MAGA country subway beatdown of 2019 itself, after an Illinois Supreme Court decision on Thursday, Jussie Smollett is now a free man. And actually, he's been a free man this entire time pending appeal. In fact, he's had nothing but free time lately, considering there aren't a lot of job offers coming his way. But now it's official. The state Supreme Court reversed his conviction on disorderly conduct charges from probably the most famous hoax hate crime ever committed, and wasting Chicago police time and resources investigating a fake that he staged. As a technical matter, Jussie Smollett is now innocent on all counts. As a factual matter, though, of course he's not, and because of those facts, nobody actually believes that he's innocent anyway. But I read the court's opinion to understand the reasoning, and dare I say, I do actually get it. Dare I say, I think it's probably even legally correct, actually, which is one of the most annoying things to read. Absolutely hating the outcome, but understanding why it is that way as a matter of process. And it doesn't mean that this is justice, of course. It's not. A fraudster is escaping justice. It means that this outcome is a collision of several factors. A crime that was absolutely committed, and everyone knows that. A corrupt prosecutor who bailed out a friend, and the due process rights of the accused in prosecution. Understand, this outcome at the state Supreme Court has nothing to do with the facts of the case. The court made no judgment about Jussie's guilt or innocence, or the validity of the facts on which he was convicted. This decision is all about the due process rights of the accused. And you know, with now outgoing Cook County prosecutor Kim Foxx handling the prosecution, at least in the early phase, it certainly was not by the book. So let's take a sub-zero 2 a.m. stroll down Chicago memory lane and remember how this prosecution was handled, or not handled, because that's what Jussie actually appealed, and that's what the state Supreme Court evaluated. Jussie staged the attack in the early morning hours of January 29, 2019. Under a month later, County Prosecutor Kim Foxx recused herself from the case, in part because she had been in communication with Jussie's family. The family made requests of Kim Foxx for how to handle the prosecution, and Kim Foxx thought this friendly relationship created a conflict of interest. Upon recusal, Kim Foxx appointed her first assistant, Joe Maggots, to handle the case, which raises further ethical and procedural questions. Is it really a recusal if the prosecution stays with the same office under the supervision of the same person? On March 8th, a grand jury returned a 16-count indictment against Jussie, and Maggots then put together the infamous agreement to let Jussie off the hook. In exchange for some community service and the forfeiture of his $10,000 bond, prosecutors would drop the charges. Jussie agreed, and on March 26th, prosecutors presented the agreement to the judge, and he accepted. On April 5th, a former appellate court justice named Sheila O'Brien filed a motion to appoint a special prosecutor in the case to investigate both Jussie's conduct and the way that Kim Foxx handled the matter. A separate judge agreed that the case should be revisited and granted the appointment of a special prosecutor. In August, former federal prosecutor Dan Webb was selected. Webb then secured a new 6-count indictment against Jussie for disorderly conduct. These are the charges that went to trial and on which Jussie was convicted in December 2021 and sentenced in March 2022 to 6 months in jail plus about $150,000 in fines and restitution to the city, when Jussie famously reminded us of his robust mental health.
I am not suicidal!
Jussie was released after just a few days in jail pending appeal, and that appeal has been in process until this resolution now. Fundamentally, Jussie's appeal is about the state making an agreement and then backing off that agreement. He raised 5 issues in the appeal, including a double jeopardy claim and technicals about the evidence admitted at trial, but this non-prosecution agreement, and then prosecution anyway, is what the state Supreme Court found persuasive in overturning his conviction. And after reading the reasoning, I do think that makes sense. The state offered him a non-prosecution agreement, he accepted and complied with the terms, and then the state said, just kidding, we're going to prosecute you anyway. And that is a legitimately bad precedent for how the state can conduct prosecution. As the court explains in the decision, that has contract implications, as in, you can't enter into a contract and then say, no, wait, sorry, I changed my mind. It also has due process implications. Is it fair process for prosecutors to enter into a non-prosecution agreement and then prosecute anyway. Now, of course, none of that means that Jussie is a good guy or did nothing wrong. It means that Kim Foxx, or Kim Foxx's assistant attorney, who we're supposed to believe handled this case. So Kim Foxx was corrupt in offering that agreement in the first place, and she too belongs in prison right alongside Jussie. And the argument about the agreement and due process is a little more technical than just that. The state argued that the initial agreement was no agreement at all, actually, because Kim Foxx handled the recusal illegally. There should have been a special prosecutor appointed by the court immediately. Instead, she handed the case to her subordinate as quote-unquote acting state's attorney, an office that doesn't legally exist, and therefore, according to the state, the agreement doesn't actually exist either. The state Supreme Court considered that argument and rejected it, saying even if the state created that agreement illegitimately, it doesn't change the fact that Jussie understood the agreement to be legitimate and complied with his obligations pursuant to it. So to undo it would still breach his rights in the same way. Regardless of how the agreements are created, you can't have the state offering agreements to defendants and then changing the agreements after the fact for contract reasons, for due process reasons. That's what the court said. And if you care about limiting prosecutorial abuse, that is an important principle to consider and uphold. So beyond Jussie, scrutiny should be applied to the people who created that agreement. Officially not Kim Foxx, but probably Kim Foxx and her assistant prosecutor, Joe Maggots. The most ridiculous thing about that agreement was not actually dropping the charges or the light punishment. It was that it had no acknowledgement of guilt. There, of course, were no charges, however minimal, to which Jussie pled guilty, but crucially, the agreement required no admission from Jussie at all. No public statement to say, yeah, you got me, I did it. And no apology to the public for wasting everyone's time and money, which of course allows Jussie's lawyer to come out after the Supreme Court decision and repeat the lie. Jussie is an innocent man.
He's innocent, and that he's always maintained his innocence. Jussie Smollett has always maintained his innocence. Jussie Smollett has always maintained his innocence.
It is wrong to believe that he's guilty.
A lot of people believed he was guilty. That's wrong.
Because there is no credible evidence that he did it.
There is no evidence, in our opinion, and based on the facts that we saw, against Jussie Smollett.
Yeah, except the Osundairo brothers explaining and demonstrating exactly how it happened.
Hey,
Aren't you that Empire?
Empire fat nigga. It's MAGA country. After I threw him to the ground, I used my knuckle and gave him a noogie. So I went like this.
And the video of them buying the stuff for the fake attack, and the check that Jussie wrote to them in exchange. How could such a thing ever happen? Jussie's lawyer wonders.
But I think people should start asking questions. How did this happen? Why should this even happen? What can we do to make sure this doesn't happen again?
Well, Jussie faked it, is how it happened. If he didn't, there's nothing to investigate in the first place. But because the conviction is now reversed, and Jussie never admitted guilt, his lawyer says that prosecutors actually wasted everyone's time and tax money.
I think there's been a lot of waste of taxpayers' money, hasn't there been, right? We've spent who knows how much. I don't even think there's a process where we can see how much the special prosecutor has spent on the case.
And so it's Jussie who's owed an apology, though he knows he'll never get one.
I'm sure Jussie would want an apology, but he's a realistic man, right? He knows he's not going to get it.
Yes, Jussie is a realistic man who fabricates elaborate scenarios where Trump enthusiast rednecks racially police sandwich consumption in late-night sub-zero Chicago. He's a realistic man who understands that when you get beat up in such a realistic way, you absolutely continue to wear the flimsy noose as a souvenir. Realistic and fashion-forward, apparently. Grounded and imaginative. Now, as far as I understand, this will be the end of the Jussie Smollett legal saga, at least the criminal case. The state Supreme Court sent the case back down to the trial court to dismiss, though Jussie's lawyer does entertain the possibility that maybe there is more to come.
But is there some loophole where they could come back and try to do something else?
I mean, nothing surprises me, right? right?
The state, of course, can't retry the case per double jeopardy protection, but in theory, I think they could appeal the state Supreme Court decision to the U.S. Supreme Court, considering the 14th Amendment's due process clause forms a legal basis for the state Supreme Court's decision. I'm not sure about the technicals there, though, so don't quote me on it. Regardless, there are several practical reasons why that almost certainly will not happen anyway. Does the state of Illinois really care about this low-level case enough to keep pursuing it? Does the U.S. Supreme Court care enough about this case to agree to hear it? Maybe there is some new area of due process precedent that both parties might be interested in, but I would put that at a next to zero chance. But even though this is a failure of the justice system, practically speaking, that won't actually make much difference. The half-year jail sentence was always going to be lesser than the personal and social costs that Jussie will rightly pay for the rest of his life. He says he spent $3 million of his own money on this appeal, and it may have cleared his name in the court records, but it didn't clear anyone's actual opinion of him. The millions would have been much better invested to get him through his jobless future. Forget a punching bag for hateful racists. Jussie is just a punchline for other people to make money now, which is why Jussie himself is not speaking publicly about his supposed victory. He knows he's just a joke.
White dudes come up to him and say, "Hey man, aren't you that faggot nigga from Empire?" Does that sound like how white people talk? Are you that faggot nigga from Empire? They would never say that. It sounds like something that I would say.
That was always among the least believable details in the story. Not just the late night timing or the polar vortex circumstance, but that Jussie was such a recognizable celebrity anyway. Nobody knew who he was in general, forget by race or sexual orientation specifically.
I kept walking and then I heard Empire.
At least Jussie has finally earned the celebrity reputation that he thought he had in the first place. Now, nobody ever even asks at all because there is no question about it. Wherever Jussie goes and wherever people see him, they all say confidently, "Hey, I know you. You are definitely that faggot nigger from Empire." And Jussie proudly says, "Why, yes, I am." And he puts down his cardboard sign and he holds out his jar and he says, "Now, could you please spare some change? I'm very hungry and I'm trying to get a Subway sandwich." Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below and especially over on X. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to come out and chat in my live streams. Those live on Wednesday and Sunday nights. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.